Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm your host Cheryl Hentz. Very pleased to be joined this evening by two members of our current Oshkosh Common Council. They're just wrapping up their first year on the council, depending on when you watch this. We're taping it about a week before they wrap up their first year, but if you're watching this after, then it's a week after. In any event, very pleased to welcome Kris Larson on the end there in the white shirt and Jacob Floam here next to me. And we're just going to talk tonight about a lot of the issues that are facing the city right now. And there are abundance of them, so maybe not as many as the school district, but
right away. You're right away into this. Here we go.
Yeah. Still, we're not without issues in the city. So anyway, as I mentioned in the open, we're approaching the first year for you guys. How has it been the first 12 months here for you? Has it gone as you expected it would, or have you had some surprises? Jacob.
I think it's a great group to work with. The seven of us have been very collaborative. There's a lot of interesting issues that hit us first. One of the biggest things is the amount of senior staff turnover. You know, with Mark Rolhoff retiring, Mike Stanley leaving, our city planner, our city assessor, number of senior department heads.
I'm just going to ask you to speak up a little.
Number of senior department heads who are no longer with the city. So navigating that challenge, along with a host of other policy challenges, has been a big deal. But I think we have a fantastic group that looks at things, critically looks out of the box, and so far has done its best to solve them. So, number of outstanding issues, obviously, but that staffing challenge, I think, was one of the most interesting and one of the most challenging things in this first year so far.
Anything that you've encountered that you didn't expect to?
Didn't think our city manager was going to retire.
Well, yeah. Other than that?
I'd probably say the revaluation issue. That was a big one.
Yeah, and I've got that on my list.
Yes,
so.
we can talk about that more. But
absolutely, we sure will. Well, Kris, how about for you?
It's the same answers. I mean, it's been, I think, a very rewarding year because it does feel like we are making progress. But absolutely, yes, a whole bunch of things just popped up that we didn't know would. Mark retiring was one, revaluation was a big one. Little things that we didn't know were an issue until we got there, like the EMS fees for the towns surrounding us and how fire was paying for those and how they were being subsidized. So I think it was a good year. It was different than I expected because, we had all kinds of idealistic conversations last time I was here of the things that we were going to do. And we didn't do a lot of those things we talked about because we were busy doing other things.
Right.
But I'd like to think we got a lot of those things out of the way and that this will be a very productive year it is a really productive group of folks. The collaboration has been awesome and better than I expected, so it's been fun, and I really mean that when I say that because it feels like we are making progress, which is great.
So what are some of the things that I know we talked about a lot when you were on and you guys were running for election last year. What are some of the things that you wanted to do that didn't get done that you're hoping will be, moving forward or possibly even totally coming to fruition this year?
Housing is still the big one, I think, for everybody.
Course,
It's been talked about for ages. I think we do get closer with it all the time. Roxy and I were talking about it before we got on the air here. But there are new developments happening, which is great. I don't think the city's made big steps towards incentivizing different types of housing, but we are getting all types of housing, which is great.
Excellent, because I got a bunch on my list.
It'll be great, but the Washington School development for single family will be amazing. The Farmington parcels for single family will be great. And we were just talking about it, but people get the perception that the city isn't building the kind of housing we need, when right this second there is a high-end apartment building coming, there's a workforce apartment building coming, and there's low-income housing coming today.
Okay, well, we'll talk about those. What have you learned in the past year?
It's complicated. It is. We talked about lighting. We had a whole discussion about parking. The parking issue for me was very interesting because it kind of showed how complex policymaking can be in the city. We put forward a poll, right, a survey for residents to take a look at and to answer, and it came back fairly 50-50. And we heard from people on both sides of the issue. I want to be able to park outside of my own house. I pay enough in property taxes, I should be able to park outside. Then other people who say, well, my neighbors have a lot of vehicles, I don't want to look at that, or so on and so forth. So that was one issue that I think kind of shows the complicated nature of the city. Also, annexations. We had
Oh, yeah.
we had a number of people come forward or saying, you know, my property's being annexed, or you know, there's a road, Meadowbrook Road, that's one that needs to conjoin, and the hookup fees for that. And that goes back to the discussion of, I think we've tackled a good chunk of the special assessment issue. That was before Kris and I got on council, but there's still others that, you know, I think still need to be discussed. So that was one thing that has surprised me, how complex some of these policy-making issues can be. But it is fun. It is fun to try to tackle those and think collaboratively as a group, and I think we've gotten a good bit done, but we have a lot more to do.
Okay, all right, excellent. You know, 2 nights before we're taping this show, there was a brand new council member who was elected, Brad Spanbauer. He's with the University of Wisconsin here in Oshkosh, and let's see here, I wrote it down. He's the sustainability director over there, so I think he can shed some good light on some of our sustainability issues. But what was interesting about it is here he is, a newcomer. I've never heard of him running for office in the past, so don't know that he has. That's not to say that he hasn't, but he was the top vote getter.
Yep.
And I think that's interesting. What do you think, as sitting council members, what does that say to you? That Paul Esslinger was kicked out, for sure, and he's been on the council 2 different times, I think, maybe even 3, but 2 for sure, and had served fairly long.
13 years.
Yeah,
quite a long
fairly
time,
long tenures. And he was booted out. And this newcomer tops everybody in the vote-getting category.
I knew this would be a question from you.
So-
I knew it was coming.
And here it is.
Yep, and theories will abound, which is great. So, Jacob, you first.
One of the things I'll say is that
You're just a copycat. You're
No,
gonna say,
I know you have opinions on this too, because you know, I mean, you know enough about me and where I stand in partisanship, so we'll get into it for sure, but I
Yeah.
knew it was coming.
Yeah.
I think one of the key things here, you get out what you put in. And as a first-time candidate, especially running against other incumbents, you need to work twice as hard. Because incumbents have established name ID, you know, you see them in the paper all the time, you know, they're at meetings and stuff like that. So, in my opinion, I think he worked fairly hard. I think he was, you know, trying to get his name out there, trying to show what he stood for. And also the fact that I think voters are very much, at least on the city level, looking for things to change in terms of the way that the city's governed. And I think a lot of that emphasis kind of went on to the election. And the reality is that when voters are frustrated about a number of certain things, some policy issues that we'll get into later, they may see the city's doing one thing well, but they may see more inaction on a different side. And somebody who may speak to them on that level is going to succeed. You combine that with how much work that you put in as a first-time candidate, knowing how much ground you have to make up compared to incumbents, and that's where I think a lot of his success came. That would just be my 2 cents on it.
Sure. You mentioned how the city is governed. Do you think that there's still an effort afoot to change the city government form?
I would say that some people probably still have that opinion. I don't think that's the prevailing opinion among the electorate. I don't think Brad touched on that issue or at least changing the form of government. I don't think he did.
It barely came up at all this cycle.
It did,
Usually
right.
that's a question
Right.
that usually everybody's
Yeah.
asking, but it didn't
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
asked.
It
I
didn't
didn't
get
hear it
asked.
either.
I think it's more of the fact that voters see a rising tax levy over time, right? And they don't see them getting a whole lot in return.
Right.
I think that's what they're saying. They're saying, okay, my property tax levy keeps increasing. Why am I not seeing more services? Or why am I not seeing an improved quality in services, right? And I'd like something to change in that regard.
Sure.
You know, and saying how the city's governed, it's probably that way instead of the form of government. It's the return on investment is
Sure.
what I would mention.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, Kris.
Me?
What about you? Yeah, you.
So you know some of my answers because I've been vocal about this cycle and the nonpartisan nature of these spring elections forever. And Jacob and I talk about this, which is good that you're here. And it's not that we disagree, but you have different insight than I do because you understand politics in general better than I do. And I'm the outlier because I didn't do the campaign things and I didn't affiliate with any party. And this one was particularly fascinating to watch. And I mean, it's the spring cycle that is nonpartisan tends to be somewhat reactionary no matter what, especially when it follows a presidential election. And I mean, this was the first year, so Cheryl, you know this because we talked about it last time, but I am so invested in these elections being nonpartisan that I formed a PAC and I will fund any candidate with my council salary who will commit to not partnering with a party. And I offered everybody running that same offer, And only Mike Ford on school board took me up on it. So we gave Mike money from the PAC, and he still won. He didn't take first place, but he still won. So at least he proved that you can do this without party support. And I understand why there's party support in nonpartisan elections. I get it, because there are bigger issues.
Yeah.
But those issues aren't, and Jacob knows as well as I do, how your water tastes and how your road gets plowed is not a Republican or a Democratic issue, nor will it ever be.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
right.
the thing. So the getting people out to vote is up and down the ballot work, and it's getting people to the polls to vote for different items. But it's become a thing where council candidates, and we talked about it last time, local judicial candidates feel like they need to partner with a party to get elected, and I don't think that should be the case. So
Well, we saw that a little bit too with our county executive race.
correct, and I knew that was what I thought we were going to. I mean, that is part of this for sure, and that was fascinating to watch, because it was one person saying they weren't that and one saying they were, and the reactions to the way people act is fascinating. We talked about it with the Supreme Court race and outside money coming into this race, and that was probably reactionary. I was listening to a story on NPR after that, and the prediction before that, before people put outside money into it, was that Crawford might win by 2 points, and she wound up winning by 10.
Yeah.
So there is a reactionary aspect to partisanship in nonpartisan elections.
Yeah, for
and we're
sure.
going to learn what that lesson is going forward.
Well, especially when you've got such a very staunch Republican trying to buy people's votes.
In theory, and I don't even need to go that far. I think it needs to be none of it, and we're all better served by it. But,
Yes.
and I understand that's a privileged position on my end, and I can say that because I was able to get elected without the help, and I know that it's not easy.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say it's easy, but it is fascinating, and last Tuesday was an amazing example of it.
Well, you know what's fascinating to me is the fact that, and you guys would probably agree, that there's always so much money that a lot of candidates put into these small local races. They're important races because this is where the majority of our money is being spent, if you will. We can see it being spent. We can make decisions through our votes how it's going to be spent. But it's a nonpartisan race. Most of these are.
And do you think you want,
And-
sorry, go ahead.
No. So what I was going to say is the amount of money that people spend to publicize themselves and get the word out about who they are and where they stand for a position that pays, I don't know, what does it pay? About $4,000 a year, maybe? Something like that. Yeah. And for the number of hours that you guys put in for that, I'm sure it falls below minimum wage.
It does.
And so, to me, it doesn't seem like there's, I don't know, I think people are just putting an awful lot of money in and not getting much out.
Oh, there is an imbalance. I mean, the nature of races just anywhere between dog catcher and president is they're getting more expensive. And that you see that on the local level too. And you look at the financial reports and, over time things are just the prices are increasing. And that can be, campaign materials a little bit more expensive, but I would say the amount of money that people are investing in these races is just climbing exponentially. Where it's getting to the point where the barrier to entry keeps getting higher and higher and higher.
Yeah.
And so, right now the state of Wisconsin has a law where the maximum donation for a local candidate that is not, I think there's certain circumstances with countywide or not, but in a municipality like Oshkosh, take the total population and multiply it by 0.02, so 2 cents a person. Comes out to Oshkosh around $1,330.
So are you saying that's all that you can spend?
That's
or
all-
that's
all you can take
All
from
accept?
an individual.
can accept, right? So like if you
From one person.
right? If you, Cheryl Hentz, want to donate the maximum amount to a certain council candidate, it can be that dollar value.
Okay.
So it's
All right.
less than the federal minimum. It's less than the statewide. Less than the federal maximum. Less than the statewide maximum. But still, I mean, over time, it doesn't limit the number of maximum donations that you can get from an individual. So you see more people, utilizing statewide resources. You see more people utilizing out-of-state money. So it's an inflationary pressure on the barrier to entry for running for local office. And I don't see it getting better anytime soon.
Right.
When
So
the-
there's a cap on how much can be donated by an individual to an individual candidate. But is there a cap on what a corporate donation can be? Because that's where I see a lot of problems. The corporations, at least for federal elections, they don't have a cap. And so they're spending $1 gazillion to push their candidate in the direction that they want that person to go. But yet, as individuals, we have caps on how much we can donate.
Oh, they do, and Kris knows this. I mean, what these larger trade organizations have are things called conduits.
Yep.
And so in lieu of a corporation itself cutting a check, individuals within that company can write a check vis-a-vis the conduit, and then it would go to a specific candidate that they would like. Same thing with corporate PACs as well. It's basically a way to sidestep the ban on corporate donations to get to a point where you can just issue it via a political action committee. And so you go back to certain court cases. Citizens United particularly, the Supreme Court ruled that money is free speech, and both sides have very much taken advantage of it. So the question ultimately lies in the fact it's like, all right, well, if there was to be a cap on how much could be spent on a local race, that would have to be a state law, and that's something the legislature would have to take up.
So I guess what I'm trying to find out is, while there's a cap on how much individuals can donate to any one candidate, is there a cap in the state of Wisconsin on what a corporation can donate to a given candidate?
Don't quote me on this. I think it's that same number for a local race.
Okay.
But for statewide, I don't know exactly what the number is. I think it's $2,000 per unit, but I don't know exactly what the numbers for PACs are off the top of my head, or corporate PACs.
All right.
But there is a limit. I would assume, I know on the federal level it's 10,000 as opposed to 6,600 for an individual. So
see, that's
you know,
just
the
not
cap
right.
the cap is higher on the federal level, on the FEC level.
That's just not right.
Further, and where my concerns lie, because we aren't talking about that big of dollar amounts with council races, and we aren't really talking about that big for county exec. We might have been in this case because the other party got involved. Where there's not a limit is what political parties can give to candidates in a nonpartisan race.
Yes.
And that's what I find problematic, because that's why the county exec race became what it was. And John did a great job, I think, trying to do what he was trying to do, but that didn't stop the party that was supporting him from running ads against his candidate.
Right.
And that's unlimited dollars. That's what makes this harder.
That's
so if you
problematic.
Right. And if you want to talk about then who becomes beholden to whom after the fact, or where the barrier of entry is, Jacob, that's where it is. It doesn't feel like you have to have 10 grand to run for council. It feels like you have to align with the party, or you're not going to get anything from anybody. And that's hard, because then there are values that come up in that don't apply to the work we do, and that makes it difficult.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about some city stuff now. We'll get back to city.
We could have done that all night.
Yeah, that would have been fun to do, right?
And solve nothing, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
So we've got a new city manager, Rebecca Grill. She will be on the show, I think in June. I've got her scheduled for. She started a little over a month ago. How is that going so far? I mean, I don't expect you to give like a report card kind of grade thing here, but just how is it going so far? She's dealing with an all-male council. When the new members are sworn in, she will still be dealing with an all-male council. Not to sound sexist about anything, but how do you think that will factor in, if at all, in your working relationship with her?
I don't think that factors in with her at all. She has been a delight. She is extremely refreshing to have around. She is proactive. She is responsive. And I am so pleased, if you can't tell. I'll keep it really short, but she's been great.
Sure. Okay. Excellent. Did you want to say anything?
I'll echo that too. I mean, she's been fantastic to work with so far. I don't think that factor plays into it at all.
Okay.
She was my favorite candidate. Full disclosure, she was somebody who I really wanted to hire on day one.
Same. We were in the same boat right at the same time.
Sure.
And so, yeah.
Well, I'm
we're
looking
thrilled.
forward to meeting her.
You'll like
and,
her.
Yes.
And, you know, working with her through this show as time goes on. So let's talk about, you know, the resolution that you guys passed not all that terribly long ago for the state to accept the original valuations that were put forth on residential properties. And you may have to give viewers and listeners on the radio a little bit of background on this, because the valuations were done the first time and a lot of people were shocked. And then the state the state did not want to accept the valuations on commercial properties, and so those had to be redone. But in the process, I don't know, why did they feel that the residential ones should all be done? Tell us
There's
about
no
that.
choice. You have to do them both, because it's the total properties need to be done at the same time. So it shouldn't, and this is where it gets speculative, it shouldn't matter much, because you are talking about 1 year change. So they'll be close to the same. The big jumps were because it hadn't been done for 7 years prior. So it should have been in the resolution too, or maybe it was to a degree, but that's just kind of how that works. You can't just do one class.
Well, but I guess I thought that they were done at the same time, but the state didn't like how the values came out.
This
for
is part of the
commercial
problem,
properties.
correct. So they're evaluated separately, but they have to be done at the same time. And the commercial didn't meet spec, but that means we don't meet spec collectively.
They both have to meet spec in order for the revaluation.
Explain what that means, because I'm not sure what that means.
No,
and
for
I,
sure.
you know, a
We've
lot of
done it
people
enough. We've
may
talked
not.
about it enough times where we'll
few.
jump right
Yeah.
through it with
Yeah.
that. So
Tell
yeah,
us.
slow it down.
Yeah.
So I would say when you reval, the ratios in valuation to what the actual real estate markets say need to be within a 90 to 110% ratio, right? So essentially, anywhere from that margin of error is accepted by the Department of Revenue. The way the Department of Revenue calculates this is essentially a math equation. They use something called equalized value. And what that is that's the same calculations that the county uses to do its tax levy, the school district uses to do its tax levy, and the tech college uses to do its tax levy. So essentially DOR has the answer key. They're holding it. The city has to do something called assessed value. That's how we calculate our values. The reason in state law is because the way it was written is that the state believes that the cities should be the ones, the municipalities should be the ones who are actually physically observing these properties when necessary to calculate their valuations. So for us, our commercial real estate ratio came in at 85%.
Okay.
So 5% too low to be within that acceptable margin of error. So essentially the state told us residential actually came back at right around the 100%. So we were all set there. But however, the state said, commercial's not good enough. You're going to have to do this again. And so we said, okay, what if we don't? What if we just go to budget with this? Or use our old values to go to budget with? They said, yeah, that's fine. You'll lose your shared revenue though. So that was the penalty, and then the additional penalty is that as in DOR will mandate that they will have other people enforcing and overseeing the revaluation process. So essentially we were stuck with a imbalanced reval set where commercial was about 5% undervalued and residential was accurately valued. So when you look at that total property tax pie, it was too much of the emphasis was on residential. So in addition to that 70% median increase, so much of that fell on residents, residential property holders. So, and Kris and I can talk about this all day. I mean, we cut the levy this time around. We borrowed from our general fund to essentially backfill the levy in order to make sure that we had a slight decrease, because the proposed around 2.8% increase in reality was closer to a 20% increase across the board with the revaluation set.
Okay. So essentially, it sounds like you took money from one pocket and put it into another to make things come out even, sort of, or acceptable.
No, well, they weren't acceptable in the end. They were better than they would have been, because the shift in value from one class to the next was enough that had we accepted the 2.8 proposed increase, literally everybody's property taxes, if you're a residential homeowner, would have gone up, no matter who you are, no matter what it was.
Right.
And that's not based on your new value. That's based on the shift in class proportion of type of property.
So when we redo
This is the good part of the conversation. Keep going.
when
Ask
we
that question.
redo, thank you. When we redo the valuations on the residential properties, how much do you think they'll differ from the valuations that were done originally?
The homes shouldn't be much. They really shouldn't. I mean, and that's the there's two hardest parts about this conversation that Jacob and I have had literally thousands of times. And we're happy to have it all the time, because this is one of those things that the more it's talked about, the better people understand it. It's never going to be awesome. It's always going to be awful. It is. I mean,
fun. Yeah.
the taxes just aren't fun.
Right.
But it's been, back to the first question, it's been kind of nice to go through this process, because we're better at it now than we were before. And what the people who live here will get out of this, hopefully, is a better understanding of the process and a more level thing going forward that doesn't change drastically like this one. No one wants this to happen like this ever again. And we're already putting measures in place to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yes.
Like
So-
what kinds of things are you putting in place?
Jacob just brought up at the last council meeting, we're going to try and revalue more often, which would be
Okay.
good. So you're not going to see huge sweeping changes in your property values.
Like how often?
Every 3 to 5 years.
3 to 5
That's what we're
years?
thinking.
Okay.
I hope we wind up at 3, but
Yes.
we'll see where we wind up.
Ideally, 3 would be the ideal. what I did is I basically did some homework and looking at other municipalities in the state and seeing what their revaluation policies were. There's the state statute policy, which is, I think the minimum is every 7 to 10 years. But for example, the city of Green Bay, they now go every 5 years. City of Appleton goes every 5 years. City of Racine and Kenosha, they do, one of them does every year some form of revaluation, then one does every other year. City of Waukesha does every other year.
Okay.
So essentially they're trying to be more proactive so that we don't see these massive sticker shock swings in value.
Okay. All right.
Cheryl, I'm going to answer your question too because I
Okay.
skipped right over
Go
it.
ahead.
The difference in equalized value to assessed value for last year was about $200 million. So that was the missing piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I get in trouble when I say these things out loud, but I'm going to keep saying it because I've said it 100 times. You can sort of presume that if the residential values don't change much, which they shouldn't, and the commercial values do change to be in the spec they're supposed to, and Jacob and I do what we might have an appetite to do, which is not raise the levy very much, then you see the things equalize and come back. So if you overpaid for this year, you will get some of that back the following year if council does what I think we should, but it's not entirely up to me. That makes sense? So it's all math.
Not
I mean,
entirely. I
Well,
mean,
it's-
and I think it's a little too deep for most people to understand. It's a little too deep for me to really understand fully. I just think it's a frustrating thing for residents when they were some of them already had great sticker shock, if you will.
Yep.
And now now that's not acceptable, and it's going to come back, and they might get hit with a little bit more of a sticker shock. And they don't understand all this that we've been talking about. I don't fully understand it either, like I said. I don't mind paying taxes if I can see that I'm getting, people making decisions like you guys who are good stewards of my tax dollars. But when I see people who are not good stewards, that's when I get frustrated and angry about the taxes that I'm paying. And I don't care how the levy is figured, how this is figured, how that's figured. I could care less.
Yep.
If I'm
Of
not
course,
getting
yeah.
good value because somebody's basically pissing away some money, I get upset with it.
As you should be.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Well, and that's why there's been such a good conversation to have, as we've been having it for, 7 months now, to a
at this
degree.
point, yeah.
So you are absolutely correct that none of it's easy to understand.
No.
But if it leads to a conversation about how to better manage the budget and to how to find savings in the levy portion of it, because the levy portion of it is what matters.
yeah.
The value is never going to be in our control.
Well, do
But
you
if we
think
can
that
keep
your
doing
resolution
that-
is going to do anything?
No,
Or was it
I
just...
have hope that it does.
It should.
It should.
but that was also, this scenario ought to be once in a lifetime or once in a generation, that there's a revaluation and a failed portion of it at the same time.
yeah.
That's and a city, we were at the extra detriment of not having revalued for so long
Yeah.
that it got so far out of spec that the weird thing that happened made it way worse than it would have been.
It did. And one of the things that I'll attempt to try to simplify this was very frustrating for council, very frustrating for me about the fact that essentially a lot of people got hit with a property tax rise when council didn't vote for it, right? And so the way that property taxes are calculated is the assessed value divided by the levy. And the levy stayed stagnant and actually fell a little bit, but the assessed value went up.
Yeah.
And so that's the way that I've been trying to explain it to people. So on the state level, what we were essentially asking for is when these very rare instances happen, that we can have some form of recourse that doesn't hose taxpayers on the local level, and so that we can use the Department of Revenue's value set so that we can do that for 1 year, we'll revalue again so that there isn't that imbalance.
Okay.
And that would have been great, and that should happen, and hopefully this serves as a great example for that to be the case to make that better in the future.
Okay. I want to talk about the school district situation for just a moment because, as I think most viewers and listeners are aware, the school district, over the course of a few years, spent $1.2 million to purchase 5 homes that ultimately would either assist them in being able to expand South Park or tear it down and rebuild new. They found out that they screwed up and they can't do anything like that, so there they sit. The city, I'm not blaming the city. I don't think the city had any role in this, nor do I think the county had any role in this. But is the city doing anything is it possible to do anything from a city standpoint to assist other bodies of government when they are looking to purchase properties for X, Y, and Z to prevent something like this from happening again?
Yeah, there absolutely is.
Okay,
And it
go
just
ahead.
starts with more communication. That's what I would say. That's probably the most critical issue.
Well, how about people looking at the notices that come to them in the mail too? Because
Yes.
that's what happened at the school district.
Yes, that-
Somebody tossed it.
Right. That would be the most, I mean,
So-
just having that, it's frustrating because we have a housing shortage in this city, and those are 5 perfectly livable houses, and the construction for new homes is more expensive than maintaining old ones at this point in time, because you just look at construction materials costs and all that. But I think the most important thing, and again, I think this also involves the county as well in certain projects. I'll mention a certain fire station in a bit, but for this, it just starts with having an open and consistent line of communication. And one thing that I would love to see, especially in the second year of council, is to have roundtables between county board members, city council members, and school board members, with it being properly noticed, obviously.
Oh, of course,
And
yeah.
saying, these are the salient issues, these are the things that we need you to check up on. And again, more senior staff exchanges too. Because that way we would be able to avoid a situation where the airport zoning became that much of a problem.
Sure.
I think that communication piece is absolutely critical.
Okay.
And Cheryl, to your point, I'll interject because that's a hard conversation to have politely also, right? Just because it is. But it's fascinating because none of that plan was a mystery to the county or the city or the school district, but nobody bothered to say anything until the 11th hour.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you don't have to cast blame to realize that everybody knew, so probably everybody's to blame.
Okay. Well, that said, I mean, is the city going to assist the school district in doing anything with these 5 parcels that they purchased? Knowing what the limitations are on what can be put on that property now.
Well, housing is fine, residential is fine. The limitations are slim. If you read through that zoning code, it's schools and hospitals, I think, is
Right.
about the only thing you can't put there.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, these are always hard conversations because we can't discuss what we want to do between the two of us necessarily, but I am hopeful that the Washington School project and the Farmington Estates projects are great examples of what we can do with lots, infill lots in the city like this one, and it presents great opportunity to do something new there. So, for sure.
I would echo that. I mean, for me, one of the things that is most critical, and one of the things I ran on was housing. And so when you look at, I take a look at places like Sheboygan, and Sheboygan County and SC, EDC, they're putting together a gigantic housing project throughout. Now they have more space than we do,
Right.
Right. But at the same time, can we try to model those public-private partnerships, or just put more of an emphasis on those?
Well,
kinds
that's a
of,
wonderful project.
Yes,
Yep.
Yeah,
it
it
is.
really is. And I think that all communities, not just Oshkosh, need to sort of model themselves over what that model is, because they've definitely got several entities involved in bringing money forward, kind of as seed money, if you will,
Right.
to encourage other people to,
And they've been able to do that.
partake in this.
When you look at, the 2022 housing study, it's rather clear Oshkosh lacks all
Right. Right.
different types
Right.
of housing. And so if we can, if we can get more people to be purchasing homes, start building equity, which frees up a lot of the rental market, that could be very helpful. That infill development, with Washington School and Farmington, I think those are fantastic ideas. Land is kind of at a premium. We're dealing with a lot of brownfield sites. We're landlocked. We have to be creative with infill developments. So that would be something that I think, for the future, if those 2 projects pan out, I know we discussed it recently, like to see how that goes.
Yep.
Okay.
Cheryl, those would be something, I keep interrupting when you're about to ask a question, I'm sorry. But those are some of the things that we talked about last time we were both here as well. And that'll be, I'm optimistic that the South Park lots can become something different than they were, but that'll be a great opportunity to have, can there be a 0 lot line thing? Can there be townhomes? Can there be things that can be purchased side by side? The things that we're not doing now that also
Okay.
aren't Farmington and Washington yet, but that's how we get to that next step of what the next product is.
Okay. Well, I want to let's talk about the housing situation here. One of the things that I want to question you guys about is you brought up about Washington School. Now, there's going to be 18 homes put on that property. I don't know, maybe I'm just looking at it with the wrong eyes or the wrong glasses, because I don't see how 18 homes are going to fit on that property. But clearly, people think that they will. 9 are going to be Habitat homes. The other 9 will be homes that the city builds and then puts up for sale. I'm very shocked and disappointed by the price tag that is being projected for the 9 homes that the city owns.
Yep.
That to me is not low to moderate income. I don't even know if I would consider it moderate income. You know, when we take a look at what the median income in Winnebago County is, and the last time I looked, I think it was like $88,000 or something like that. You probably know, don't you?
Not offhand, but I think you're in the ballpark.
Okay, all right. So when you have an income of that level, I don't know how you can begin to afford a home that's $275,000 up to $350,000 or thereabouts.
Yep.
So why is the city putting such a big price tag on these? I understand the costs of construction and all that. I get all that. But it just seems like, I don't know, we should be doing something other than putting what I think are pretty nice homes on that property.
Well, that's the question, and that's the hard part. Believe me, if there were a way to do it less expensively, that would be the first thing we'd be trying to do. Mm-hmm. So I should have brought those papers, because we know all the numbers at this point, right?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
And there's definitely a gap between affordability and what the house will cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to be a little bit cognizant of what needs to be in the neighborhood. So they need to be the right size, the right type. They need to have a basement. They need to have the things that fit in, because you can't do the wrong type of house in the right type of neighborhood, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But we did, so the workshop, which if you didn't see it, was a good one, I think, because we all knew what was happening ahead of time. Yes, yeah. We had very good conversations about how that affordability would work. And the agreement and direction from council was to base it on city of Oshkosh, not federal numbers, so that we were dealing with the levels of that people could afford who already live here, which is the important part.
Okay.
But yes, there's a gap on every single one of them. And I can tell you where I am optimistically on it. I haven't told anybody this because we don't get to talk about things like this, but the county is also working on some loan programs that would help with things like this. Mm-hmm. So back to Jacob's previous point about getting entities like cities and counties to talk to each other, there might be great opportunities for a partnership there to bridge that gap to folks, because yes, they are not affordable at the income level that we are going to put there no matter what right this second.
You mentioned that they have to have basements. Is that a city requirement, or is it just a requirement over in that section?
That's what they should have to fit in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
What do you mean to fit in that neighborhood?
You don't want things that are different than every other house in the neighborhood. That would be bad.
Why not?
Yeah, you gotta ask the neighbors.
Well,
I mean, I do, but I don't live there.
Yeah.
As a neighbor, I could care less if my neighbors have basements or not.
I think you might be an outlier in that. I think most people want the exact same house next to their exact same house, and they're not wrong. That's why zoning code exists.
I'm just thinking about a couple of homes that I've seen built lately, just in the last 2 years. They don't have basements at all.
And I don't think that's the sticking point for value or for price here. That just kind of is what they are.
It's a historical thing that we've run into multiple times in terms of whenever there's a new housing development, you will see neighbors who may get a little bit antsy about a specific thing, right? They may say, well, if the homes are going to be built at a lower price point than my home is worth, is that going to drop the value of the neighborhood? I personally wouldn't care. If I lived in that neighborhood, I would say it doesn't matter to me whether or not they have basements. I don't
doesn't matter to me.
Right? I mean, I just want to see, more people living here and whatnot. So I think, ultimately, back to Kris's point, we have seen a major gap, and this is a nationwide issue between the price point of what is considered a quote-unquote entry-level single-family home versus what people can actually afford.
Right, exactly.
And so I think part of that is a supply problem, but the other part of it is again that kind of intergovernmental structure and communication to try to assist people where we can.
Okay.
And there's a lot to it. It's expensive to build houses right now. Money's expensive to borrow right now. It's not the best time in the world to do any of it.
It's tough to borrow.
Yeah.
All that said, do you remember the housing start numbers from 2023? 6?
I think it was
12.
I think it was 19 single-family homes built in the city of Oshkosh in 2023.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, gosh, we're down to about 19 minutes that we have left, and we haven't covered anywhere near what I want to talk about.
See, I was worried it was going to be only
Why don't we let's talk about some of these other developments, and let's kind of go through them as quickly as we
Rapid
can
fire,
here.
yeah.
So you keep mentioning Farmington,
Yep.
okay? Tell us about Farmington. I think I know where that is and what that is, but for people who don't know, tell us what Farmington is.
Just off of Jackson to the west.
West.
That is how many? I forget. 39.
32. I think the original was 36.
Yep.
They have dropped to 32. So it's basically empty land, former farmer's field, and then essentially it's connecting two streets that were both dead ends,
Okay.
looping them together, looping the utilities, and building 32 new single-family homes that are in line with the neighborhood out near the Valley Christian School.
Okay.
More workforce than low income.
Yes, workforce
Okay.
geared, yeah.
All
In
right.
keeping with the neighborhood and
Okay.
under the same premise. I mean, new houses are good, new people are good, all the growth is good.
Okay. All right. And we just talked about the Washington School. There's a project called Boatworks.
Yep.
I thought that was an interesting name. But it's a project located off Ohio, just south of the Fox River, at 4th Avenue and Michigan Street.
Yep.
So that's going to add 56 units.
Yep.
And it's going to start sometime this year.
Yes.
What kind of things are those going to be priced at? What levels are we talking about?
They
here?
said workforce, and workforce, I think the median rent was around anywhere from 900 to 1100.
900
around
to
there.
1100.
So that kind of
so they're going to be homes that you rent.
Yep,
It's a
that's-
project.
those are
It's like a
apartments.
multi-development
Yep.
project.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
All right.
So that's the middle of the price range kind of thing.
Yeah.
And what was it again, Jacob? What did you say again?
I would say it's probably workforce or next generation housing, and the median of 900 to 1100 in terms of rent.
Okay. Now that sounds more realistic
Sure.
than what we've been seeing. Okay. Then we have, of course, Mill on Main, which is that still slated to be a 3-phase project?
As far as we know,
As far
right?
as we know, in
Phase
one is,
one, this was brought forth about 2 years ago. They finally broke ground. Yeah, I'd say in the last 6 to 9 months they
Yes.
broke ground. I have not been down there to see what's happening. Is it coming along?
You should
Yeah.
see his way out of the ground. It looks great.
Yeah.
Great.
I drive by it every day. We're making good progress on it.
I'll drive by there and take a look. Those are going to be more upscale apartments, though.
Correct.
It's going to be on the water. They're going to have a bunch of amenities. I can't remember what the rent is going to be, but I'm sure it's going to be upward of between $1,500 and $2,000.
I would think.
if not more so.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And when all is said and done with that, all 3 phases, there's going to be how many units there?
I don't know offhand. A lot.
Yeah,
a fair
there's a
number.
lot.
I would say probably north of 150, but don't quote me on that.
Oh, I
Yeah.
think you're right, though. I
Yeah.
think it's well beyond
Yeah.
that. So, okay. And then, of course, we got the one on Lake Butamore that has 110, something like
It's around
that?
Something like that.
110, yeah.
Okay, and so that's coming along.
Yes.
And now here's 2 interesting ones that I found. There's a project called The Corridor, and they have received some tax credits from the Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development
Yep.
Authority,
Yes.
otherwise known as WHEDA. And that is going to bring 55 new housing units to North Main.
Yep.
That's going to be like multifamily dwelling? It'll be apartments?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
And low income.
Yes.
Low income.
LMI,
Okay.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about that is they also will have, as part of that building, operated by the Oshkosh Child Development Center, they're going to have a daycare in there that will cover 2 shifts.
Yep.
I'm
That's
assuming
correct,
first
yes.
and second shift.
One of the few places that offers childcare in second shift in the city, which will be very helpful
Yeah.
to kind of alleviate that pressure. The other nice thing about that development is it's currently empty. It's currently an empty plot of land. So they've broken ground on it, kind of observing where it is, and it's coming along.
Okay. And now, because they got money from WHEDA, is that what's helping to keep the rent at low income?
I would presume, yeah.
Okay.
Certain percentage of it has to be
Yep.
for a certain amount of time. Those are the
Okay.
way that those tax credits work.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Then we've got another one called Meridian. They've also gotten some tax credits. 92 residential units on South Main between 7th and 8th.
Yep.
That's also going to be an apartment kind of thing. Will that also be low income since they got money from WHEDA?
I think that one is also, but I don't know that for sure.
I'm not 100% certain. There was something in the Herald about that recently. I've seen two different designer specs for it. One of them includes an existing building, one of them does not. So we'll have to see what the exact plan looks like. I know the Planning Commission's looking at it soon, and they did just look at it. But but that's currently an empty lot as well. And I would assume, I think what I read in the Herald was that, yes, it is LMI.
Low to moderate income.
Yes.
LMI. Is that the property that was sold to a developer from Appleton for $1?
I don't know.
I'm not certain.
Okay. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure it was.
I think it is. If you and I are thinking about the same plot of land, I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a redevelopment authority project.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So it does sound, and how are the property, how are those homes on Jefferson coming along? Are they finished yet or no?
No, they broke ground recently, and the foundations are being filled in right now. No.
So, I mean, I'm happy to see some things moving in the right direction.
Yep.
You know, it's high time that we did, and so this is a good thing. One thing that I read, and it's I've heard it from other people too. It's being said that because the housing boom in Oshkosh is what it is right now, it's creating some options or some alternatives for people who are looking to get into different kinds of housing units. I didn't quite understand that, but do you guys know what that even means when someone says something like that?
I think that's interpretive.
Okay.
We're going to have to see how these developments actually play out and how quickly they fill up, and also their impacts on things like traffic. I know the Transportation Committee, they always look at these kinds of studies and whatnot. So my hope is that, you know, people look at a city like Oshkosh and they think, okay, well, I have a variety of housing options. If I want to buy a condo, I can buy a condo. If I want to buy a single family home, I can do that. If I'm a recent college graduate or a single mother and there are affordable options out there, there are options there. And so I think, you know, what Kris and I both want to see is a wide variety of a multitude of housing options, so that people can come here and they feel like, okay, you know, my choices are narrowed to these two complexes or this neighborhood. It's like, no, there's plenty to choose from. That's what we would like.
Well, that's the nice thing. I mean, I'm not against progress when there's very expensive homes being built, as long as it's not leaving other people by the wayside.
Correct.
You know?
And
Yes.
that's what we
So-
always talk about. There's the ways that we incentivize those things, and we haven't had to do much of it yet. I don't think we've done as much as I would have liked to see the city do.
Yeah.
But it is nice that some of those things are naturally happening, and having more options for people is great.
Yeah. Well, and you know, because we're landlocked here for the most part. I mean, we can't go anywhere really. So I've been talking for a while about going up, you know, build vertically, and so it's nice to see apartment buildings, you know, not just all one way. Most of them are going up, and that's about the only thing that we can do.
Yep.
Otherwise, people are going to have to go to another community for housing because we just won't have it here.
Well, we have to be creative,
Right.
and that includes
Yeah.
building up.
And
Yeah.
the more should help to level prices as well, because it has been outpriced for a minute, and things that shouldn't be as expensive as they are, like we talked about last time I was here, are more expensive than they should be.
Right.
More options help with that also.
My dream would be the city of Austin, Texas built so much housing of all different kinds to the point where the average rent began to fall. And I think we are a long way off from that here,
Right.
but that would be my ideal. Where
Well,
there's,
let's
yeah.
all move to Austin. Yeah, it sounds
I like
great.
Oshkosh.
Well, Austin's a nice city to live in, too. Okay, I want to talk still on the subject of housing, but a little bit different. There's been a push for a tenant resource center in the city, and I know this is something that when Lori Palmieri was still on council, and I think maybe she might have been mayor at that time, she and I were talking about that, because I was serving on the board of what was it called? The Tenant Advisory Board, or I don't know.
Rental
housing.
Yep, Rental Housing Authority Board, RHAB.
Yeah, it had
Yep.
some weird acronyms there, or weird letters there. But when I was on that, we were talking about a tenant resource center, and you know what steps could be taken to create something like that. And then it just sort of fell by the wayside, and I'm glad to hear it's coming back. Any kind of movement along those lines?
I know a few things about it that council hasn't heard yet, because I've been working on it behind the scenes. Councilor Bulow did a great job of getting some of the Racine Rents as a program that does that very well.
Okay.
He had some of those tenants were introduced to us by a speaker, which was great. There is some progress behind the scenes on what would be the very good beginnings of we're going to call it Tenant-Landlord Resource Center this time.
Good.
Because getting the landlords involved in this process will be helpful also.
Absolutely.
So a resource where tenants have somebody to reach out to, but landlords have better ways to navigate through inspections and planning and that kind of stuff as well, because that's the pathway we need collectively to make that better for folks.
Well, and even if it's a resource for, tenant-landlord disputes,
And that'll be part of it. I mean,
so that can be good
I think what
too.
we've all found in discussing that and sort of the homelessness issue at the same time, there are pretty great resources and pretty great things provided for folks in Winnebago County and in Oshkosh. What there sometimes isn't is somebody to be the go-between between all those services. So there's siloed things that exist. We're pretty good at lots of it, but I think that a TLRC would be a good place to start with being able to point people in the right direction of the things they need and covering some bases that we don't have, like the retaliation part of it, everything you would need as a tenant or a landlord.
Yeah. Okay, great. The Grand Opera House needs some renovations. Hard to believe because it seems like just yesterday that they renovated a lot, but it has been a number of years. So they need about $10 million worth of renovations, 5 of which the city is coming forward with because the Grand is owned by the city.
Yep.
They are going to do some kind of fundraising for the other $5 million. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yep.
Do we know when this project is supposed to start?
I think it was 2027.
I think so,
Yeah,
too, yeah, in
it's
the
contingent
neighborhood.
on when they complete their capital campaign.
Okay.
But I think 2027, 2028 is when they aim to
Okay.
get started on it. And I'm sure you've seen the renderings of it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a transformation of the entire block. And I think when you look at the health of downtown, making sure that that place stays current as one of the flagship properties of the city, not just what's owned by the city, but just in the city in totality, is critical.
Right.
So, I'm glad the city invested in it, but I think that match, making sure that the community has buy-in and skin in the game with it, is just as important.
Sure. Well, and even though it's in the city, it is kind of a face of Oshkosh.
It is, yeah.
It's not right at our doorstep as soon as someone drives into the city, but most people come here and they're going to something downtown, whether it's the
we hope.
convention
Yeah.
bureau or the convention center or some of the hotels that are downtown or whatever in the downtown area. So it is something that people are bound to see.
Absolutely,
And they should see something that looks impressive and is impressive. There's nothing though with that is, I know when they did this before, it was a must-do situation for safety and everything else from a structural standpoint. There's nothing like that happening right now. This is just purely
Not safety,
physical,
but
aesthetics, that kind of thing.
it upgrades a lot of tech. It
Yeah.
puts a big door in the back so we can get bigger productions in there, which
Right.
is good. So it helps modernize what happens at the theater in general.
The
Okay.
basement is a maze.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's
Back to
not
basements
safety,
again
but back
now.
to yeah.
Well, just don't shove the ghosts out of the basement.
Oh, I'm sure they'll stay.
Well, they should. Okay. I'm not really sure how much time is left, but I'm thinking that we are running low on time, so I just want to throw a couple of things out here. The city still has in place a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. The county did away with theirs, I think, 2 years ago. Any movement in that direction to do away with ours, or are we keeping ours in place?
At this time, I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, I don't know why we would.
Okay, that's good.
Rapid fire. This is good ones. Go.
Well,
Keep going.
some people didn't know what was happening at the county level either. Now, as council members, you have to also serve on some boards. Like Kris, what are you on?
I'm on Housing Authority and then BID and then CVB sort of residually.
Okay, Jacob?
Landmarks and parks.
Okay, you got 2 of the fun ones.
Yes.
You got the hard ones, Kris.
I know.
So, do you guys need people on those boards that you're on?
No, we always
Always.
do. Always.
So that's, I knew that some did, but I wasn't, it's kind of like at my church. Okay, you got all these different committees. One is just overloaded with people, and the others are kind of limping along, trying to get people. But if you are at all interested in serving on a board or commission for the city, I'll tell you, as someone who has served on different boards over the years, it is time well spent. It's not a lot of time that you have to volunteer, and you will gain so much knowledge about how the city works, why it works the way it does. You're not going to come away knowing everything, but I can assure you, if you ever decided to run for a common council position, that would be a good springboard to use to get you into that. And even if you don't plan on running for council, it's just a good thing to know how your city runs and operates on a day-to-day or a month-to-month basis. And it's a way of giving back to the city because we all live here and we all have to do whatever we can to make it right. I'll get off my soapbox now. You guys have anything to add to that?
Not much.
Okay.
I would say it's very rewarding. You get to work with some fantastic people from all different walks of life, and everybody has their issue area, and you never know what's going to come up. Anything from a no-wake zone to plaques to parks, development of parks, and then local history as well. At least for the ones that I'm on, they are a great amount of time. They really hone in on expertise, and the work that you do, council is supposed to trust. So when you give a committee report, when you make your recommendation vote, council relies on that.
Sure.
I think it's a unique sized city in that you can join a board and commission and have an actual impact on the things that happen here almost immediately. That doesn't happen in a city of 10 million people. It does in a city this size.
Yeah, that's great.
Yep.
In our remaining moments here, I want to talk about the intersection of Sawyer and Oshkosh Avenue. You guys have acquired some property there with the intent of eventually doing something different with that intersection. It's such a funky intersection to begin with. It's weird. I'm from here originally. I've seen that intersection all my life. But as our population has grown, that has become more and more of a weird kind of intersection.
Yeah, I want to meet the person who designed that.
They're probably dead by now. But what is the city planning there? I know you can't put in a roundabout because of its close proximity to the bridge.
Yep. Do that.
But what else? What else are you kind of planning there?
It just gets cleaned up and made normal. Essentially, it looks great. The plans are pretty straightforward. They weren't completely finished yet because there's a better access needed into the boat parking to the right there along Rainbow Park. But it just cleans it all up and makes it normal.
It makes a fairly standard intersection.
Right. As weird as the right word. It's weird.
Yeah, well,
you know
what I
funky?
think is weird is as you're going down Sawyer Street, in order to, like if someone's coming off the bridge and turning onto Sawyer Street and wants to get into that park that's right there, it's dangerous.
It is.
I almost saw someone get hit there a couple weeks ago.
Try riding a motorcycle through there.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
All right, wear your helmet though, Kris.
I always do. Always do.
All right, okay. So will anything be done with improving safety there for people who are wanting to get into the park?
I think everything, and that's the whole point.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right.
As close to a standard four-way as we can get it.
Okay.
That's the draft design.
All right. Very quickly then, as we wind down our remaining moments here, I think we all got, at least I got in my most recent water bill, notice about the water taste changing. Real quickly, in about a minute and a half, tell us what's going to be happening there.
It is a scheduled part replacement for a piece of heavy equipment and machinery that has reached its end of life cycle. So it has to be replaced. For this is not the same chlorine that's put in pools and hot tubs. This is stuff that is approved by the DNR, approved by PSC. It is safe to drink. And so for this, it's important that citizens know that this is safe to consume. So you may notice an increased smell, you may notice an increased taste, but it is safe, and that's the most important aspect of it. It is obviously temporary. This hasn't occurred out of the blue. This was a scheduled piece of maintenance that needed to be done.
Okay, so it's going to taste or smell perhaps even differently. Is it going to look differently?
Not as far as we know.
No, not as far as we know.
The most recent news I got was you may not even notice.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's important that you get that word out and that you're told that just in case. It's also important to know that because that's part of what we do, right?
It is. Yeah.
Sure. So it might taste differently. It might look a little differently, but probably not. It might smell a little differently. If you notice any changes with the water at all, I guess if you want to play it safe, boil it.
They're saying a charcoal filter will do the trick. Setting it out in a bowl for 20 minutes or a pitcher for 20 minutes will dissipate any extra smell.
Okay.
But ideally, no one will notice much.
And right out of the tap, it's still going to be
totally
safe.
safe. Yes.
Okay.
And they test it all day, every day, so it's promised to be safe. Yeah.
Somebody told me last night that they're putting more chlorine in the water, and I said I don't believe that to be true. So
in this case, yes, but that's
it is going to be. Okay.
Yes, but that's to offset what the ozone isn't doing. So the piece is going to replace the
as
ozone
it's offline.
Right.
Okay.
And
All
only
right.
temporarily and
Okay,
only a little
that's it.
bit.
We're out of time. But thank you, guys. I appreciate your being here. Thanks to my guests, thanks to the crew, and thanks to you. We will see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.